It is exactly 9:20 a.m. South African time. We cross over to the UK and we'll be talking with Head of Advocacy at Cage International, and that, of course, is Anas Mustapha. This is in response to the plans that has been announced by the British Home Office to ban anti-genocide direct action campaign group Palestine Action, expose the arbitrary nature of proscription powers. I have said that correctly. And let's look at the implications should this, in fact, go through. If it does get passed, what does that mean for pro-Palestinian organizations within the UK? Salaam alaikum to you, Anas Mustafa. Welcome to the program.
Walaikum salam. Thank you for having me.
And let's look at the response to my introduction. UK's plan to ban Palestine action. Is there a huge outcry by the groups concerned, pro-Palestinian groups and other such groups? Because if it is targeted at pro-Palestinian groups for now, it could then, of course, be targeted at other groups within the country.
Yeah, thank you for that introduction. I mean, prescription laws have been in effect in the UK for a very long time, perhaps in excess of 2 decades, especially as part of the counterterrorism or terrorism powers since the war on terror ensued in 2001. Usually, the government would have prescribed quote unquote sort of militant groups, groups involved in armed sort of insurgency against, for example, occupation forces or have a particular ideological leaning and militant stance, for example. But what we've seen in recent years is that there's been a shift, and that shift has happened primarily because terrorism laws are drafted in such a broad and sort of dragnet way. It enables the government to chase and go after anyone whom they feel is a threat or they feel undermines their narrative and is able to pursue them under the most extreme legislation there is, the terrorism powers. And since the genocide in Gaza has ensued, the government has activated counterterrorism legislation to pursue the pro-Palestine movement more broadly, and especially its sharp end, which Palestine Action represents. I mean, if you consider there's a long tradition of activists in the UK and elsewhere, which have targeted infrastructures that have been involved in criminality, whether they're corporate infrastructure or state ones. And usually these groups and activists end up being celebrated, whether they were for, you know, environmental reasons or others. But when it comes to Palestine and when it comes to Palestine Action, which is actually upholding the duty under international law to prevent acts of genocide, the government's response to it is to attempt to prescribe it. So we're expecting that at some point this week, the Home Secretary will present a fuller plan with details as to how they will seek to do this. The UK House of Parliament. It's unclear exactly which under which legislation they're pursuing this. But what's clear for all is that the government has become ever more increasingly authoritarian and increasingly draconian when it comes to treating the pro-Palestine movement and protecting and enabling the live stream genocide we're currently seeing in Gaza.
So you've indicated that they're probably going to be passing this law soon. How do you believe that you, as Cage, head of advocacy at Cage International, will respond to it? And more importantly, the people on the ground, the supporters of all of these pro-Palestinian activities. And to my knowledge, I haven't really come across, unless I've missed it, but any of these pro-Palestinian supporters in the UK become violent or, create problems when they go on their marches and call for the banning, or rather stopping the genocide, and also asking your government, the UK government, to stop supplying arms to apartheid Israel. So there are all of those issues perhaps that the UK government is concerned about, because there is a lot of pressure on them not to side with the US's stance on genocide Israel and to stop supplying those deadly arms to further annihilate the Palestinian people.
Yeah, you're totally right there. I mean, when it comes to support, I mean, there's been widespread sort of condemnation of this position of the government. Some even in mainstream papers. Most pro-Palestine organizations have come out in solidarity. I mean, I think over the weekend there's been a statement that was signed by over, I think, 40 groups or so on in support of Palestine action. So the support is there. The solidarity exists. The UK government has paid lip service to not enabling genocide or serving Israel with weaponry, but it's continued to fly reconnaissance planes and share intelligence with the Israeli occupation forces up until this day, and that's what's prompted this escalation against Palestine Action. Palestine Action, their banning has been on the cards for a long time. The pro-Zionist network in the UK have been pushing for this for the best part of two years, really, since the genocide has started. But what's prompted this sudden shift that we could say is that on Friday, Palestine Action activists managed to break into an RAF airbase, and they managed to spray paint and sort of decommission two planes which are involved in the reconnaissance operations over Gaza. So really, they are actually involved in stopping acts of criminality and stopping the UK's complicity in war crimes and in genocide and supporting apartheid. So Palestine Action ought to be celebrated. Palestine Action ought to be supported by everyone, really. They take immense personal risk to stand up for.
I think we have lost Anas Mustapha. The line has just died on me. Let's take a short break and see if we are able to reconnect with him. Do stay with us.
Sponsor an orphan, and you'll help support a vulnerable child to have the education they've always dreamed of, so they can build a brighter future. You'll be feeding a hungry stomach and a hungry mind with knowledge that will last them a lifetime. That's the power of an education. Sponsor an orphan now with Islamic Relief.
Breaking stereotypes, moving boundaries, joining hands. Salam Media. Humanity sets the agenda.
Welcome back. It is 9:28 and we have reconnected with Anas Mustapha, Head of Advocacy at Cage International. We are talking about UK's plan to ban Palestine Action. And of course, there's been a huge outcry to this. Back to you, Anas. Sorry, lost you there in mid-sentence. Would you like to continue, please?
Yeah, I was just referring to how the recent shifts in policy was prompted by an action against two reconnaissance planes which operate from a UK airbase and actually are involved in intelligence flights over Gaza. And Palestine, these activists managed to sort of decommission these planes, so to say. And that prompted a massive outcry from the Prime Minister to Home Secretary to all sorts of pro-Zionist organizations and persons. So that's prompted the most recent shift. However, if someone would consider it objectively, these activists have intervened to stop UK's complicity in war crimes, in apartheid and in genocide. And that ought to be celebrated, really. And the people that should hold their head in shame, really, are those who are enabling the criminality that we're seeing happening across Gaza. So I think it will be it'll be a drawn out fight between the state and Palestine Action in the courts of law. Cages is mobilizing its resources to sort of defend this and stand against this sort of legal action, you could say, or act of lawfare, really, from the state. And we'll see where it ends up. But one thing for sure, really, is that counterterrorism powers and prescription powers that are used to ban organizations have been exposed once again as being highly politicized pieces of law that only enable state aggression and transgression. And the sooner we can abolish all of these powers, the better it will be for everyone else.
And although we applaud those activists that were involved in obviously spray painting and decommissioning those two planes, ironically or very sadly, it's played right into a government's hands, has it not? Because now they're going to really go all out to pass this law. Terrorism and proscription laws are now brazenly enabling the continuation of a live stream genocide. And your organization, Cage International, has demanded, not now, not yesterday, not last year, but over 2 decades, that these powers must be abolished as they are a threat to collective freedoms, not only for the Palestinian people, but global citizens or citizenry. Anas?
Yes. So
Oh.
really, I mean, the legal aspect here is it's slightly it's not the main issue, because the powers have existed on the books for some time to prescribe and to ban. What's being considered now is perhaps the government is considering perhaps alternative methods to restrict the activity of Palestine Action and give itself new powers that perhaps have less legal scrutiny. It's still unclear, but should the government want to ban Palestine Action under existing powers, it could do, arguably so. It could do. So that's just a procedural question that remains. But as I've explained earlier, the momentum against Palestine Action from the pro-Zionist lobby here in the UK to sort of dismantle their activities or ban them has been happening for a long time. We've noticed over the last year and a half how many of their activists are actually being charged not under sort of like criminal damage law, which was the typical sort of charges, and many of the times juries in the UK would actually acquit them entirely. The prosecutors began introducing terrorism elements into their cases to essentially ensure that there are much tougher sentences and that the legal procedure is done in a way that's favourable to the prosecution. So this has been a shift that's been happening for a long time, prompted by the escalation by Palestine Action in response to the genocide in Gaza. And Palestine Action is only one of many organizations involved on the ground here in the UK, but it's definitely one that is seen to be as the sharp end and really at the frontier of defending Palestine in the UK.
Let's wrap up then and tell us a little bit about Cage. I know you're an advocacy organization, but just give us a little more insight as how long you've been in operation, I think over 22 years, and the type of advocacy you do.
So Cage International was as a response to the shackling and chaining of innocent men being sent across the globe to Guantanamo Bay. It was born to advocate for them, tell their stories and share their pictures and their names, very simply so. Over the years, Cage has developed its work and its remit to challenge state oppression when it comes to the application of counterterrorism powers. We've recognized that over the last 2 decades, the greatest legal threat, perhaps, to Muslim communities here in the UK and in the West more broadly, has come from counterterrorism powers, which have enabled the erosion of not just the rights of Muslims, but everyone else, and has also empowered and emboldened Islamophobia across the board. So CAGE is an organization that's dedicated to defending Muslims who are targeted by counterterrorism powers, campaigning against these laws, documenting, reporting, it's involved heavily in advocacy and media work, and it's a sort of a fully fledged rights organization with a plethora of experienced personnel serving the Muslim community here in the UK and now more globally. So that's a brief introduction, perhaps for your viewers to appreciate the work that we do.
And long may you live and survive, inshallah, to really voice the voices of the oppressed. Thank you indeed for being with us on the show this morning. Anas Mustapha, Head of Advocacy at CAGE International. Assalamu alaikum to you.
Walaikum salam.
It is 9:36. This is News and Views, and our next guest is Hassan Seria, Press TV correspondent in South Africa, and we're going to be talking about the Iranian situation, the Fordo under fire, why the US targeted Iran's most guarded nuclear facility. That and much